Welcome to the Brave Enough Show. This season, we are talking all about stress and how stress plays a role in our life, our health, how it helps us at times, how we can control it, how we can manage it, how we can prevent it from moving past stress to burnout. We're talking about so many things. And the reason that we are talking about this is because I was under so much stress in my life at one point in 2013. I wanted to walk away from it all. I wanted to leave everything behind. I had a crazy job that I was really successful at, and I was getting more and more success, which was actually causing me more and more stress. I had 4 little kids under the age of 7. I was a mess. I was honestly a mess, and I wanted to leave it all and just walk away from my life, which is terrifying. And I take this topic very seriously because I work in an industry in healthcare where stress can lead to many things. It can lead to broken relationships. It can lead to people having significant stress, anxiety, depression, health problems like coronary artery disease. You're going to hear all that in this season. And very transparently, it can also lead to suicide and the loss of life, broken relationships. We don't even talk about all the other things that stress can lead to, like substance abuse. And so I'm passionate about this because it has affected me in my life, and I've seen it, how it affects other brilliant, wonderful people. I have created a course called Brave Balance. I've run now, I think, 9 cohorts of this course since 2018. And it has changed hundreds of women physicians' lives, hundreds. And I have the evidence to show that. I have their evaluations. I have their self-assessments. It's amazing what this course does. This course really helps women design their work life and design the life that they want, where they both have money and meaning, because that's why we have jobs, is to make money. Let's be honest. There's a large part of that, but there's also meaning in our life and meaning in our career. We want that. We desire that. We want to have balance. And this is about having brave boundaries and brave balance, because you can't have balance without boundaries. There's no such thing. So if you're a woman physician and you're listening and you're like, I need this course, it's 3 months, an hour a week. It will change your life. It's online. You get coaching from me. You get a safe space to share. You get to meet other women who are in your exact same scenario, and you get to learn. It's radical boundaries, radical change, 3 months. You could change your life in 12 weeks, an hour a week. If this is of interest to you, message me. Email me at sasha@becomebraveenough.com, or go to becomebraveenough.com and click on my courses link. You'll see it right there. Sign up. What are you waiting for? You get CME. Hello, sign up today. Okay, without further ado, we are getting right into my guest today. My guest today is Rachel Gilbert. She's a wife, a mom, a trauma-informed therapist, and the owner of BBC Health, and a podcast host. She's also an author, which is amazing. And she is a frequent speaker, and she lives in Dallas, and she's going to be coming on today and talking to us about basically how our internal thoughts are vital to de-stressing, and how we think about ourselves and our body and who we are essential to taking stress out of our life. So let's welcome her to the show today. Welcome to the show, Rachel. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So you have many roles and many jobs, and I would love to hear how you've really chosen this current career and this current mission really that you have to help women see themselves differently, love themselves, and walk through life at this stage of their life a lot different. Like I really love to hear how you found yourself here in this just current stage.
Yes, I feel like I'm definitely one of those people who found my career later in life. Getting into the therapy world, I went back to graduate school after being a stay-at-home mom for a decade. And so kind of did things backwards a little bit, but it also led me, I feel like, to this path because my undergrad degree is in exercise physiology. And so I was in the fitness world and teaching group fitness and things like that. But I've always had a love and an interest for counseling and therapy and just that type of field. I think partly because I'm a listener by nature. I've, been one of those people, even after I would teach group fitness, I'd have women come up and just talk to me about their marriage and about all these things. And then being a mom, I have 3 teenage kids, 2 girls and then a boy. And again, just walking through some things in my own personal life, I just really felt like I want to go get more training on this. I find myself in these situations where I have my own podcast and I'm doing a lot of speaking and things. And I just knew I want more training to, whenever I would see people stuck, be able to have tools that I could teach them to help them with and even work through trauma and things. And so that's kind of, what led, I feel like it was one of those things where it's one door opens way for another door, and just trusting that, okay, I'm going through this door and now here's the next thing. And I just live life like that. And that's how my husband and I live life for sure in business too.
I love that. I love when women, I love to follow and learn from women who are learning, because that tells you they know they don't know it all, And so I love to follow experts and influencers who are constantly adding knowledge to themselves, whether it's a course or self-improvement, or they share what they're learning, because it tells me that that person is a lifelong learner and they're going to constantly be taking in information as they give it out. I'm always wary of people who are like some expert, but they don't have any of the backup. And so I love that you went and did this. I think it's so powerful. That story is going to empower someone listening that maybe is like, I've always wanted to learn this thing or go back to school and do this thing. So I think that's really awesome. So this season, we're talking all about stress, and you and I were talking just before we hit record about how easy it is for stress and the shouldas, I call them the shouldas, I should do this, I should do that, to suddenly just pop into your brain in the middle of maybe a good moment. Like you can be having a good moment, you can wake up and be like, I don't have a lot to do today. Maybe I'm going to work on this or do this. And then all of a sudden you get on social media and you're scrolling and you're seeing a picture of somebody that just ran a 10K, or somebody that, is up in glam and all this. And you're like, I don't look like that. I can't run a 10K. I should do this. I should do this. And suddenly your day, which seemingly may have had low stress, becomes high stress. Can you talk to us about how our thoughts really contribute to stress levels?
Oh yeah. Oof, we see this all of the time. Obviously I see this professionally, but then even personally, I'll tell you right now, even just this last weekend, I had a situation like that. It was a Saturday, and it was like the first weekend in forever we had not had something going, right? With 3 teenage kids, you always have something. If it's not work related, it's family related. And I was so excited. I'm like, yay, like you said, super just low stress weekend. And I thought, you know what? I have a few, I've got about an hour this morning. I'm going to check some emails real quick. And I opened one email that totally sent me over into stress mode and made me like really, I had to just work through my thoughts all weekend on not letting this thing that was waiting for me on Monday morning with work, right, bleed over into my weekend. So I love what you said, because we live in such a different world. I love technology. I never want to hate on technology because it's a tool, right? It gets us places. However, oftentimes, because especially if you are somebody who is a working woman, if you're a working woman, we have work right at our fingertips now, right? And even when we, like you said, social media for sure, emails, text messages even, and we have to be so intentional with what we're putting into our mind, what we're taking in, because if not, it will run the day. It starts with us consuming something. And then of course, once we've consumed that thing, then the thoughts take off, and then you're in that thought wrestling and you're stressing about something that's not even happened. And maybe it's even a few days away. So this is something that I've never met a woman who doesn't struggle with this, to some degree, and that's why then we have to be intentional. One, not only what we're consuming, then when we do find ourselves consuming something that sent us into stress mode, being able to pull out of that and not sink into, oh my goodness, now I'm just living this way all the time.
Oh, I love this. This is going to help so many of my listeners, Rachel, because I was just coaching. I have a coaching group called Rise for Women Doctors, and it's a real small group. And there's about 15 of us in there. And we were talking last night about reading emails on vacation or on our off time, and how it's not just enough not to answer it. Because if you read it, it consumes your brain. And like, maybe you're on the beach, right? And you are there with your kids and you've saved up for this trip, and it's a once a year trip that you take, and you're like, I'm not going to answer emails, but you read the email. And then all of a sudden your amygdala is hijacked and your brain is hijacked, and you're angry about the email, or you feel guilt about the email because maybe you have the answer that you could easily share quickly. And now you're not on the beach with your kids. You're at your office, you're in your culture, you're back at work. And we were talking about how it's so hard to untangle our brain from that. Can you talk about like an easy thing that we can do when we recognize, like, I've slipped up, I've actually read the email? So I personally take email off my phone when I go on vacation. I just delete the Outlook app. Otherwise, I am too tempted. But what do you do when you find yourself in that spiral, right? And you know, like, I shouldn't be thinking about this right now. What do you do to step back out of it?
Yes, I love this question because I'm that same way. I've had to get really intentional with boundaries when it comes to phone and different things, but like you said, unfortunately, even with these great boundaries in place, we still, like myself Saturday, as soon as I read the email, I was like, oh, Rachel, you know better than to check email on your day off. What were you thinking? So then I, had to go through that process. But my best tip for all of us when we find ourselves here, rather than shooting on ourselves and beating ourselves up of you knew better than to check email and go down that road, because that's not going to help you feel any better. That's just going to make the thoughts get more intense in a different direction, is first of all, calming our nervous system, because we talk a lot about thought work, right? Which is powerful. But oftentimes when you're in that moment, we've literally just triggered our fight, flight, freeze, right? And so you're in survival mode. Your cognitive thinking is kind of a bit, I don't want to say completely offline, but it's definitely not running the show. At this point, your nerves, your adrenaline, it's just very wound up. And so a very simple thing I love to do, and I teach my patients to do, is some form of bilateral stimulation. You can do that with butterfly hugs. You can do it with tapping. Go for a walk. This is why I'm a fan of some exercise. Like that's what I had to do this weekend. I took a lap around. We have a pond outside back of our house. I took a lap around the pond and just was, kind of decompressing. But what that does is it calms your nervous system to say, hey, you're okay. You're safe. Like everything's okay. Then we can start the thought work, right? Because sometimes people get frustrated when they immediately go into the thought work and it's not sticking, and they're like,
Gotcha.
I'm trying to reframe my brain. I'm doing all the things I know to do, but we also have to calm the nervous system as well, so that your body and your brain and everything knows we're safe. We're not, we're not being chased by a lion right now. There's not some, catastrophic thing happening, even though it feels internally like there's a catastrophic thing happening. We calm that nervous system, and then we can go, okay, let's think through this logically. Let's reframe these irrational thoughts that are happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you talk about the physical aspect of stress, because I can feel that often before the thoughts. Like I can feel my heart rate pick up, and I can feel my neck getting warm. We all have different stress. Some people it's their stomach. It's always my neck and my face and my heart is where I feel stress. And I think it's so important that we realize that it has a physical effect on us sometimes before the thought has registered. You're stressing, you're entering stress mode, you're experiencing stress. Your body's already there. Like your body's already in it before your brain has really caught up. One of the things that you teach is the triangle effect to your patients to help them reframe and challenge their core beliefs. Can you talk about what that method is for our listeners?
Yes. And actually, before I do that, can I share? I think your listeners will find this fascinating. Have you ever heard of Dr. Gottman? I'm a Gottman trained therapist. And one thing that in couples counseling, they'll keep a heart rate monitor on each person. And when they notice the heart rate going up, because you mentioned your heart rate, I just want to say this, that when the heart rate goes up, and the therapist will say, okay, we need a timeout and take a walk, do some deep breathing, do some grounding, because until your heart rate is back down, we're not going to make much progress here. So I just thought you'd find that fascinating with what you just said.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah.
I need to do that myself when my husband is making me angry and I feel my heart racing. I need to just take a lap.
Yeah.
Put myself on a lap before I respond.
Yes. So then with that said, to answer your other question about our core beliefs and the triangle effect, this is the part where once we've taken that lap and we've calmed down, then we can start looking at these things, right? And so core beliefs drive everything we do. We have positive core beliefs, we've got some negative ones. And so, for example, if a negative core belief that I have is, if I say no to somebody, that makes me a bad person, or that I failed them as a friend if I say no or something. So that would be a core belief that I might need to challenge, because see, if I believe that, then anytime I'm asked to do anything, instead of honestly really looking at my calendar and going, do I even have space for this? Where would I even fit this in? I just say it's almost like I have to say yes. Otherwise, that's a reflection on me as a person. And so the triangle effect is that your thoughts affect your feelings and your feelings affect your behaviors. And so when we really start looking at those thoughts that we're having, like that one I just gave on, oh, I have to say yes. If I say no, they're not going to be my friend anymore, or, something like that. We're just taking that, really looking at that thought. And so if you were to draw a triangle, I like to have people draw a triangle, and at the top, write thoughts, and then one corner, put feelings, and the other behaviors. Because a lot of times we'll try to just change the behavior, which we call behavior modification. Well, like with stress, for example, I just need to stop stressing. I need to, wouldn't that be amazing if we could just
I need to work in a place where there's no stress, right?
Exactly.
I need a new job.
Yeah. But instead of just thinking, let me just change this behavior, we go look at the thought that's really driving those feelings and those behaviors. And then we can decide, is this a behavior and like something I want to keep in my life? Or if I'd like to change it, then I'm going to have to start with my thoughts and start changing the thoughts around it.
I love that. So it's a lot like cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Like starting with the thought and the belief, and then that creates your feeling. And I think it's really easy sometimes for us to jump to feeling, but we forget about the thought. Like we know how we feel angry, but we don't realize there's something driving that. That's so critical. And so obviously there are different ways in the moment to de-stress, and to do it in a way that is timely and quickly. You mentioned some techniques like grounding yourself, distracting yourself can even be a technique. When you have that runaway brain, like you're like, oh my gosh. And sometimes, I work in a very high stress environment at times in the cardiac operating room. And I can honestly say that I can be driving home and actually be more stressed than I am in a crisis situation running CPR. I'm not lying. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but like at the end of my day, if I'm driving home and maybe I'm late, I didn't get out of work at the time I thought, I'm feeling pressed for time. I've got to get kids to the next thing. And this person, one of my teens is having a meltdown or something. I can just create a stress in my brain that is like, I feel 10 times more stressed than when I was doing CPR 3 hours before. It's crazy. So I know you understand this because you're a therapist, and you would probably tell me that that's totally possible. What are some, like, how can we reframe our thoughts when it doesn't feel like it's working? Like our brain is just, right? Like for me, it's lists. I start thinking of all the things I have to do and all the things I cannot achieve. And I go into like spiral mode, and then I come home and walk in the door and project on everybody. That's typically what happens when I'm stressed. So how do we start and prevent that runaway brain from happening?
Yeah. Well, yeah, as you mentioned, I did, already mentioned the bilateral stimulation and things like that. But the other thing that I'm drawn to, even in what you're mentioning here, especially those of us who are in the helping profession of any kind, and are professionals of it, and no matter where you're planted, is, a little bit ago when we were talking about the cognitive triangle, you said a lot of times we'll jump just to feelings. And I actually notice people lean towards one or the other. They're either really comfortable with the thoughts or they're really comfortable with the feelings. And usually I'm having to help them turn on whichever one they're not most comfortable with addressing. So when you're in the helping profession, like you mentioned, you're doing, you're in the OR, and then I can even relate to this, definitely not the same level of stress, but when I, counsel people back to back all day long, we're very cognitive in that moment, right? And so any of our emotions that are coming up, we're silencing them. I mean, because we have to, right? Like when you're operating, I would assume like if any emotion came over you, that doesn't even have space to come up. And
correct.
Rightfully so, right? Like I'm very glad for that. That's a great moment that it's a good thing that we're able to kind of say, hey, emotion, I see you, but yeah, you're gonna have to sit over here right now because I got to do what's right in front of me. I have to stay focused right now. So it's awesome for a moment, but that's why it's usually after the fact that it bubbles up inside of us, because we just spent all day saying, hey, emotions, I need you to just be quiet over here and just chill and let me do my job cognitively. But those emotions are still there. They still need to come up. And so even you saying that phrase projecting, we all have you ever seen an emotion wheel? I love emotion wheels.
No, I have never seen an emotion wheel.
Yeah, just Google it. I have one in my office that I keep up and I'll show it to patients, because the thing about emotions is there's a whole spectrum of emotions. And when we've had to push them down for whatever reason, even if it's a good reason, like I said, to get through our job of what we're doing in that moment, they want to bubble up and out. And if we don't give them space to come up, even in small ways, at some point, that's when you see those eruptions. That's what makes people kind of scared of emotions or give them a bad name, because they're like, oh, I'm just so emotional. And my thing is, well, that's because we let them all come up at once, right? But if we would give little pockets so like even on our drive home, I'll do that. I might look like a crazy person to the person driving by. I'm driving by myself, but I'm like, oh, I felt so frustrated today whenever this happened, and I'm just giving words to my emotions to get them a chance to come up and out. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. And sometimes I can sense this in myself. It's a feeling of, I try to really decompress on my commute home because the hospital environment can be so stressful. And I know that I'm going to bring that energy into my house if I don't decompress. And sometimes I just talk to myself and self-coach on the way home, because I think I used to just be like, what's wrong with me? Why am I so stressed? Why couldn't I handle that? I have to go home and cook dinner in 30 minutes and feed people and get them out the door. And I'm a mess. Right. And just changing my kind of doing some self-coaching on the way home and going, that was so stressful today. And oh man, I'm feeling like just empty, or I'm feeling anger, or I'm feeling frustrated or whatever. And just kind of talking myself through those emotions and owning them and being okay that I have a right to feel that way. And then by the time I get home, I've kind of emptied it out of myself. So when I do walk in the door, I can breathe and I can not bring this, like all that stuff that's trying to bubble out into the house. And sometimes I have to sit in the garage for 5 minutes because I'm not ready to go into the house yet.
Yep.
Right. And I love that you talk about the helping professions, because I really do think it's an added level of stress in our life when we are emotional caregivers as well. To the people. So I know you started out your career in the fitness industry. You've written this great book about image. Talk about how exercise and body movement can help us de-stress and process our thoughts efficiently.
Yeah. So, exercise, again, one, I love that it is a form of bilateral stimulation, but it gives us that chance to get some of this energy, especially when you are in a stressful season, up and out. And a lot of us, again, and I know for me, I sit all day, right, when I'm counseling and things. And so for me, it's very important that I get some movement in to get some of that, just that extra energy. And especially, again, if you're stressed, it's common that to have extra adrenaline pumping and things like that. But then we do just have to be careful that we don't swing too far over into over exercising or several days of HIIT and things like that. Because like HIIT training, which just stands for high intensity interval training, which I love to do, but if you do that 5 days a week, those types of exercise are actually designed to trigger a stress response because they're changing the body, they're conditioning you, which is great for athletes. And like I said, doing it a couple days a week. But if that's the only form of training that we're doing, we are now contributing to our stress levels and increasing our cortisol levels and things like that. And so now something that could have been a good thing, like, and again, when you're in a very stressful season or even just a stressful day, choosing a form of exercise that's a little lower impact, like a nice walk or yoga or something, is going to get you that movement, but not add extra levels of stress to your already stressed system.
Yeah.
And so it is about balance. And even things like yoga, I know it's also just even that deep breathing. Most of us don't practice deep breathing in our everyday life because that's a grounding technique, but we just don't do it naturally. And so that's why I love to practice yoga at least once a week, because it does remind me, oh yeah, this feels so good when I like intentionally do this deep breathing and things like that.
Yes. And it's so counterculture. Like I just went on a retreat a couple weeks ago and we did a 5-minute meditation in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we did a 30-minute meditation. And I was like fine with the 5-minute meditation. And then the 30-minute meditation, it took my brain 20 minutes before the squirrels would stop running, because I don't ever, like, I just don't meditate for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was so good for me though. By the end of it, I felt like I had just had a massage. I was like, why don't I do this more? Right. But it's so counterculture. So I want to end on a question that I get a lot. I coach a lot of women, and these women have so many, they just have so many things that they are managing. They're managing teenagers, aging parents, businesses, patients. I mean, they're just managing so much. And a lot of a very common concern that I get is, I don't feel like I'm in charge of my thoughts. I can't get control of my thoughts. Do you have any kind of, words of wisdom or just a way to build confidence that you can be in charge of your thoughts? Because I think when you're in that stress loop, it's so easy to feel like it's controlling you and you're not in control of it.
Absolutely. I think a great practical place to start is making sure you are, I know not everybody loves this phrase, but doing some form of a brain dump of those thoughts, of getting them out. Because part of why they're racing is, especially if you're somebody who is extremely, not only busy, but has a ton of responsibilities, of course, you're not even making it up that there is a thought for everything you're in charge of, right? It is a lot. Like, you're carrying a lot. So giving yourself some grace for that, but then also making sure you're getting it out, which is why I'm a big fan of journaling. And I know sometimes people are like, oh, I don't like journaling. My advice to you is forget long form, pretty paragraph journaling. I like bullet point journaling, and like maybe 1 or 2 words of, okay, I'm, I thought about this thing, I thought about that thing, and just kind of getting it out, getting it out. I mean, it's almost like you kind of see this spiral happening. I'm like, hey, we're shooting the thoughts out. And so whether that's writing it down, whether it's doing like what you already said, Dr. Seisha, just on your drive home, saying those thoughts out, like you're getting them out. Maybe you can talk to a friend about those thoughts. Maybe you have your own counselor you can talk to about, because that's the first starting place. And I know that's extremely simple, but so many people, a lot of these racing thoughts are because we're just not giving them an outlet. They're just staying on a loop in the brain. And I'm like, we got to get them out somewhere. They've got to go out. And then if you practice that and you still are noticing, man, I'm having a hard time, then that definitely at that point, I would consider working with a therapist or something to teach you some thought work, and really some activities and things like that, just because having those tools in your tool belt is what I like to call them, to be able to know how to, when you're feeling that you've tried the things and it's still not working, have some tools to be able to process those things.
Oh, I love this. This is so good. You've given us so many great tips and I appreciate your expertise so much. And I know that my listeners are going to just soak this in and they're going to love this, because we all are, like you said, we have so many responsibilities. And so there's so many thoughts tied to those responsibilities. And it can just be an exhausting way to go through your day if you don't know how to do this thought work. So thank you for giving us real life application and tools, and not just like a bunch of woo. I love it, because we can start doing these things today. And so tell anybody that is listening, where can they find you? Where can they find your book? Where can they find more about you, your podcast, all the things?
Yes. So my main landing hub is my website. That's rachelgilbert.com. You do spell my name Rachael. And there you can find my podcast, Real Talk with Rachel. And then my book is also there, and that's Image Restored.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Okay, that was so good, was it not? She's amazing. And I love talking to therapists because they know so much about our inner thoughts and how to process them. And who doesn't need to get better at their processing your inner thoughts and doing inner work? So that was just like a free therapy session. You're welcome. If you are a woman in medicine, in healthcare, or not, if you're a professional woman of any kind, I want to invite you to a life-changing weekend this fall. The Brave Enough Women CME Conference happens every fall. It's happening this year at the Omni Monte Lucia in Scottsdale, Arizona, a gorgeous, gorgeous resort at the foothills of Camelback Mountain. And beautiful spa, beautiful space. And I'm telling you, you don't want to miss out. If you've listened to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I went one year, I want to go back, but I've not made the time, or I've always wanted to go to the Brave Enough Conference, this is your year. This is your year. Bring a friend to this amazing weekend. You will not regret it. The way that I program my conferences are that you have time during the day to relax, to spa, to sit by the pool, to connect with other women, and to do and process some work, and to relax and recharge. That's how we do this, because I really believe in giving women space to change. So this year's theme is No Women Left Behind. We are bringing everyone together. We are connecting at a deeper level, and it's a mastermind approach. We did it last year. It was incredible. I want you to be there. Go to braveenoughconference.com and sign up today. Don't wait. Do it now.